Chapter 2 today. Focus. So we've done a basic intro to corporate forms, which is important to understand because we'll be talking about organizations in this class primarily. But now we're going to move on into Chapter 2. We're going to move on to and really start talking about the actual finance side of things. And as you know from your previous classes, the vast majority of healthcare is paid for by a third party, right? We have third-party insurance, right? So most of you probably, unless you are incredibly wealthy, don't pay out of pocket for your healthcare. You pay, or at least not primarily, you have some sort of health insurance, whether that is employer-sponsored health insurance, which is the majority of working age people, or you have government insurance such as Medicare and Medicaid. Or if you're like me, TRICARE, which is the military health system health insurance, which I'll probably talk about at some point, but it's a much smaller percentage of the population. So we're going to talk a little bit about insurance today. My big fat pen, not my skinny pen. So we're going to do basics of insurance. Right, and again, you know, insurance could be a whole class or maybe a couple of classes if we're really getting into the details. I want to just give you kind of a little more detail than what you've gotten in the past in, say, 401, right? Now, insurance is based on probabilities, right? It's all about probabilities. So you guys have taken statistics and you've done some basic probabilities. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of this language today that you are probably familiar with. The example I like to use is, when thinking about insurance, is a roulette wheel, right? So I've only been to Vegas once. That was enough for me. I learned my lesson that I think I would be easily addicted into gambling, and so best for me to stay away from it. Roulette is probably the easiest game to understand. Roulette is the circle one, where they spin the circle and then the dealer throws I don't just actually call it dealer, but whatever, he throws a little marble in, it spins around, it lands on a number, right? And there's a whole bunch of ways to bet, right? So you have this wheel, right? And it's got, you know, little slots in it, and some of them are red and some of them are black like this, right? And so, and there are 36 red and black numbers, or 18 red and 18 black, right? So if you throw your, you know, you can bet red or black, and if you bet, say, if you bet red and they're numbered, right? So they're numbered 1 to 36. You can bet a whole bunch of different ways. You could bet on like one number, and then you win 36 to 1. So if you bet $1 on one number and you're like, I'm betting 17, and it hits 17, you get a payout of 36 to 1. Just, you know, so if you bet $1, you get $36 back. If you bet, and there are a bunch of other ways to do it, kind of the most simple way though is to choose, say, red or black, right? So if you bet red and it lands on a red, they match you. They give you $1. Like, you bet $1, they give you $1 if you win. If you lose, they take your $1, right? So you're either going to get $2 at the end when they spin the wheel, or you're going to get $0, right? You're going to end up with either 2 or 0, right? So what we say here then is, let's say there are 2 possible states after they spin the wheel. There's red and there's black, right? So these are the states. And then there's a probability of 50% red, 50% black, and the value of your outcome is going to be, and let's say we're assuming we're betting red. If it lands on red, you get 2, and if it lands on black, you get 0, right? Now, some of you who actually know this game know I'm leaving out an important part, right? And I'll get to that in just a second. But let's say that this is actually what roulette looks like, because it actually doesn't. But the way we calculate, what we want to know is, when we calculate a risk, right? We're taking a risk, and we're assuming 50-50 chance of winning or losing. So it'd be the same thing as if we flipped a quarter, right? What we do then is, to get the expected value, right? We want the expected value we multiply the probability times the value, P times V. So 50% of 2 is 1, and 50% of 0 is 0. The expected value, EV, is the sum of the probabilities times the values in each of those states. So 1 plus 0 is 1, right? So when the expected value, right, is equal to the bet, right? When the expected value is equal to the amount that you're putting down that you're gambling, this is called a fair game. Right? Because basically, you don't come out ahead or behind. If you had an unlimited bank account, you bet $1 on red over and over and over and over again, and the probabilities were 50-50 that you would win when were 50-50. Sometimes you'd win and you get 2. Sometimes you'd lose and get 0. But if you bet forever, right, you would eventually come out even. You would average 1. So you'd bet 1, you'd end up with 1. And so you'd be neither ahead nor behind. This is what we call a fair game. Now, who actually knows about roulette? And how this portrayal, I realize, is very simplistic, but how is this wrong? This does not accurately reflect what a roulette wheel actually looks like. I'm leaving out a key piece. So it does actually have red and black, 46 red and black numbers going around, but there's something else that's on the wheel. Yeah. Say it again? Does it like sometimes end up like in the bottom with no spaces? No. It always lands in a slot. What's missing from my drawing is that there are 0 and a 00 that are green. So there are actually 38 slots, right, on the wheel. 18 of them are red, 18 of them are black, and 2 of them are green. So if you bet red, your probabilities are actually red, black, green, right? Your probabilities are actually 18 out of 38, which is about 47.4%. 18 out of 38, which is also about 47.4%. And then green, which is 2 out of 38, or about 5.2%. So you still have, if you're betting red, right, your values are, if it hits red, you get 2. If it hits black, you get 0. If it hits green, you get 0, right? Is everybody with me? So this is the hitch, right? This is the trick in Vegas, and with roulette, is it's not, it looks like and it feels like it's a 50-50 chance, right? You get up there and you're like pumped up. They're giving you free cocktails. Has anybody been to Vegas? And like, actually, are any of you old enough to gamble? Yeah, you're old enough to gamble? You been there? No? Okay. So like if you go, it's really cool, because if you go to like the casino floor, in most of these casinos, there are waitresses walking around giving out free, like they have, what would you like? Oh, I'll take a gin and tonic. All right, I'll be right back. Here's your free gin and tonic, or here's your beer or whatever. They just give you beer and wine and drinks all night long while you gamble. And as you drink, you become more and more convinced as to how great a gambler you are, of course, right? Which is the point. But the setup makes you feel like it's a 50-50 chance. It's really not. It's a 47, to 53 chance-ish. Right? which is still pretty good odds, right? I don't know that there's another. I think craps maybe is a game where the odds are a little better in favor of the gambler. But this is pretty close to about as good as it gets. So you get an expected value of about, in this case, 0.95, 0, and 0. And that's roughly about 0.95. So when we add that up, we get 0.95. Now in this case, with roulette, the EV then is less than the bet, right? And so this is not a fair game. The outcome is weighted towards the house, right? Sorry, you guys in Zoom land can't see me using my fingers. Weighted toward the house, right? So in this case, if you had your unlimited bank account and you played over and over and over and over again, right, you would eventually end up with having lost about 5 cents on average, about 5 cents for every bet that you make. And that's how casinos make their money, right? Every single game is stacked against you as the gambler in some small way. Now, if you actually, so no serious, I don't think roulette is not a game for serious gamblers, right? Because they understand kind of their serious gamblers do other kinds of games where they have a little where skill actually has some impact. Roulette is for amateurs like me. So my story I tell is I went there, played roulette because I could understand. I could look and be like, all right, yeah, that's that's 50-50-ish. Let me I can understand the rules pretty easily. So I'm like, put a couple of dollars down, And I kind of got on a hot streak, right? I was winning, because it's close to 50-50. And how many times, you can call, if somebody just sits there and flips a coin and go, it's going to be heads, it's going to be heads. There's a good chance that you'll catch a series of, you'll guess a series of times, because it's 50-50. So I won, like, this is cool. I started playing some more sophisticated things like, you can play odd even, you can play the first 12 and the second 12, and I start doing all these different things. Just, I'm thinking that I'm kind of like, on or something. And my wife comes by and she sees me, and she's been out playing the slots because was like her, like, all right, we're here, we might as well do this. She comes over and she sees me with a stack of chips. And I started with 20 bucks. I was up to $200 and something, right? After and she's like, she comes over and she's like, is that yours? Yeah. She's like, cash out, let's go. And I'm like, no, I'm hot. This is great. Don't worry. Here's some chips. Go cash them in and go play the slots some more. And she's a little nervous. She says after, she's like, you're kind of sweating a little bit. I was a little nervous, but whatever. The worst you can do is lose the 20 bucks. So she goes away. And I'm betting, and all of a sudden now I'm not hot, right? I start losing all my bets are wrong. So now I'm like, for whatever reason, fate gave me for 2 hours, I was hitting everything I said. I could practically not go wrong. There were actually people standing next to me saying, following my bets. Oh, he's betting there. I'm going to bet there too. And they were, and it was like somehow or other that I was granting them, some sort of like magic thing, which is how gamblers, amateurs lose their money. Because each roll, each spin of that wheel is always, the same odds, regardless of how many times you have bet, which is a thing that tricks our little monkey brains. Right, is we think that because it hit red and red and red, that it's going to have to flip to black now, right? No, it's always 47% going to be red. It doesn't matter what it did the last time. It's always 47%. All of a sudden I just start losing. Like, I can't pick. If I say red, it's black. If I say odd, it's even. And I'm just like losing. And I start betting, guys. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to bet a big number on, it's got to be, I'm like, all right, the last 10 things have been, I was trying to count the numbers, and I was a red 14, and I'm red 17, it's got to be odd and black, so I'm going to bet a whole bunch on odd and black. No, it was even and red again, you know, and I lost. My wife comes back around. My chips are down to like, I have like 6 chips left. And she's like, what happened to the chips? And I'm like, you know, and she's like, come on, let's get out. I'm like, no. I bet my last chips and I was out. Like I'd gone from, you know, 20 to like 300. I think my high was like around $300 to 0. And I'm like, total emotional toll, right? And she's like, come with me now, and drag me out of the casino. Because I think I probably, if she had not done that, I'd probably been like, let me go to the ATM, I can win there. You know, let me get back in the game. Because my luck has to change. Well, first of all, no, it doesn't. It's always 47%, doesn't matter, right? That's the nature of the game. So that's kind of my gambling story. So don't gamble, it's bad. I mean, or if you gamble, do, you know, make sure you go with a friend who takes your ATM card and you go in with, you know, $20 or something and you lose, you know, go in with the assumption that gambling is an entertainment, not a way to make a bunch of money, right? So I've got $20. This is going to go in there with the assumption this night is going to cost me $20. You might be out in 5 minutes. You might be out, you know, you might be able to play for a couple of hours. Just remember that at the end of the day, the house always wins. Right? And now you might win, right? Like I could have walked away with my $300, but some other sucker, you know, or suckers really, because it's a law of big numbers that the casinos operate on, would have gone in there and lost their, you know, 5% of their bets, because the casino has deeper pockets than you do. And that's how they stay in business, right? First of all, they've got to tip toward themselves, right? The house always has an advantage. And then second, they have deeper pockets than you. They can afford to lose more times than you can, because eventually they will win. Which is why they give the free drinks, right? This is not like, it's not a charity. Those are not charitable people. They give you the free drinks, first of all, to get you drunk, so you have worse judgment. And second of all, because you lose, right? On average, more. And so they just want to keep you staying there. So casinos make the difference between the expected value of the game and your bet, right? So on average, they're making about 5%. This is actually called the house edge in gambling. And insurance companies work the same way, okay? So insurance companies work the same way. So let's imagine now, instead of roulette, that we have, we're talking about health insurance, okay? So now we're talking about health insurance, we're talking about you and your health and your financial health as well, right? Because the reason we have health insurance is not to protect us from the doctor's annual visit that costs, you know, if you were to pay cash for, would cost you $150, let's say, but to protect you from getting run over by a bus and having $500,000 in medical bills, right? So it's not the small stuff that we can predict, the $20 immunization, the $5 a month for birth control. That's not why you have insurance. You have insurance because you know that there is some small probability of complete and utter financial ruin if you don't have it, right? Now I will get into why you also have health insurance for the small pieces, right? The small predictable expenses like your annual exam, your birth control, your allergy medicine, whatever, right? Those are there, and there's a reason for why you have health insurance for that too. But when we're talking about insurance, and I'm going to make that differentiation here, when we're talking about insurance, we're talking about controlling for risk. Think in terms of you are protecting yourself from financial ruin, not trying to take care of the predictable, manageable expenses that you expect to have, and know with you know, near perfect knowledge that you are in fact going to incur. First of all, I hate wearing my, people in Zoom, I'm putting on my reading glasses. First of all, I hate wearing my reading glasses because when I have them on, I can't see you very well. And when I don't have them on, I can't see this. So it's just kind of a mess. I need bifocals, but I haven't admitted that yet. What's that? Okay, I guess I just did. Yeah, I really don't actually need long distance. I just need the readers. So what I need are like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm just not prepared to like wear glasses full time. Little vanity. All right. So let's assume that so the original health insurance, talking about. Who remembers from 4.1? I'm assuming you've talked about this. Who remembers from 4.1? What was the original health? What were the first, in the United States at least, what was the first health insurance created to cover? Remember? What component of healthcare did it cover? And we're talking, what component of healthcare? Anybody remember? Way back to like freshman year, probably for most of you. So it was back in the Great Depression, right? So back in the Great Depression, the Baylor in Texas, the Baylor Health System had a hospital, and and during the Great Depression, teachers, very good, Caitlin, nice. So teachers, right? So this was a plan. The hospital was seeing lower rates of admission because even in the 20s, you didn't necessarily go to the hospital if you were ill. You'd stay, most likely you'd just stay home and family would take care of you. The doctor would come to your house. So hospitals were kind of a luxury. They were either a luxury or they were an extreme poverty kind of thing. Like, you don't have a family to take care of you. How sad, you have to go to the hospital, right? So it was kind of this bifurcation of you were either poor and alone, right? In which case it was a charity kind of thing, like true charity, or you were wealthy and you went to this more sophisticated level of care. Well, the Baylor Hospital realized that in the Depression that they were losing. They were not getting the number of admissions that so the hospital was losing money. So they came up with this scheme, and they sold the first kind of hospital insurance to teachers, as Caitlin said, right? For some very small amount of money, you could, if you were a teacher in the, I guess it would be Waco, I'm not sure where this was exactly, but I know main campus is in Waco. But you were a teacher in the town, you could, if you bought this health insurance through your employer, and you got sick, you would have some number of days that you could come and be cared for at the hospital, for no additional charge. So it was the very first health insurance in the United States at least, was this hospital insurance. It wasn't until later that we started to see medical insurance becomes, in the 30s, we see medical insurance starting to emerge that covered the physician costs, right? So, and we have had that kind of bifurcation, up through today, because the hospital, as we talked about last time, bills, and then the physician care is separate. Physicians thought medical insurance, the insurance for providers, tooth and nail. They did not want it. They didn't want insurance companies getting between the patient and the provider. Sound familiar? We're still, except that now, I think the average physician can't even imagine not having health insurance. They just want the health insurance to pay whatever they tell them to pay, which isn't how it works anymore. So that kind of came about. So originally, the Baylor plan paid for 21 days of hospitalization. This is kind of the precursor of Blue Cross. Right? So Blue Cross was one of the first kind of national health insurance organizations, and Blue Cross was strictly hospitalization care, so hospital care, and then Blue Shield, right, emerges later on in the later, I think in the 30s and 40s, emerges to pay for the physician care side. So, so your provider bills, both inpatient and outpatient. And so that's the origins of Blue Cross and Blue Shield. And then we have a variety of other insurance companies kind of come out after, as we progress We have Medicare emerging in the 60s, and so forth, right? So we have gone from a world where almost no one had health insurance to almost everyone has health insurance. And today we have a policy argument that everyone should have health insurance, and if you can't afford it, then the government should pay for it, right? Or that it is a right. There's a variety of different stances. Okay, so let's take just a very simple example. Let's imagine that we have these states. We have you're healthy or you're sick. Okay? And let's say that the probability of being healthy, because you all are young and healthy and vibrant, is 99%. There is a 1% chance that you are going to get very sick. If you get sick, if you are healthy, then the cost to you is zero. If you get sick, the cost to you will be $20,000. So based on what we just did a minute ago with the probabilities, what is the expected cost or the expected value, right, of your scenario? Go ahead and write it down. So look at what we did for the casino game example, roulette example, and see if you can do the same. So what have I got to do over here? I'm going to make a third column. What am I going to do? Go ahead, Caitlin. So I'm going to do PV. So 99% times 0 is 0. 1% of 20,000 is
200.
200. Good. So then I just add the column up, and I get that my expected value is 200. So your expectation, right, at time 0, right? So we're about to start the game, if you will, the health game. Right? So we've told you the possibilities, right? You're about to spin your wheel, and there are 100 slots on the healthcare roulette wheel. 99 of them are black, 1 is red, right? And so on average, if you had unlimited resources, you got an unlimited bank account, and you played the health game forever, the expectation would be, on average, in each round, if we were averaged out all the rounds, on average in each round, you would lose how much? $200, thank you, right? On average, you would lose 200, right? Because 99 times out of 100, on average, you would lose nothing. And then that 100th time, the ball would land on the red slot, and you would owe 20,000, right? So on average, it's 200. And if you have deep enough pockets, right? If you have an unlimited bank account, you can afford to pay the 20,000. So, every 100 times. Have any of you ever heard the phrase, never try to wade across a river that's 3 feet, on average, 3 feet deep, right? So what is that? How does that apply here? If you're wading across a river that is on average 3 feet deep, what does that tell you about the depth of the river? Right. So what's possible? Yeah, it could look something like this, right? Here's the water, right? And it's like here, it's 1 foot, right? It's 1 foot deep here, and then it goes like this, and right, that's 20 feet deep, right? And then it's 1 foot deep again. So you're good. you're like me gambling. You're like, hi, I'm happy, and I'm walking, right? And you're walking along, and then, you know, and oh, it's like only up to my knees. This is fine. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to win. And then you get here, right? And you go, oh no, right? And you go down and you drown because, you know, you can't swim and you're just trying to wade across the river because somebody told you it was on average 3 feet deep, and you're like, 3 feet is like up to my waist. That'll be fine. Well, not really, right? Because somewhere in that river is a 20-foot deep hole that you can land in, right? And so that's kind of the same thing with health insurance. So I said, what's your expectation over the life of this game if you play it over and over and over again? Well, it's on average $200 loss, but the actual outcomes are either 0 or minus 20,000. Now, I don't know about you, but 20,000 is a lot of money to me, right? So you don't lose 200 because you don't lose the average. You either lose 0 or you lose 20,000. And so insurance is meant to cover what is called tail risk. And so when we think about a tail, what we're talking about here is, remember that standard distribute, you know, normal distribution, sorry, it's not standard distribution, normal distribution, and these ends are called tails. Right? There's a tail here and a tail here, right? And over here is where you lose $20,000, right? Everything over here is you're safe. So tail risk is in finance. When you hear a finance person talk about tail risk in particular, you're talking about the bad side of the tail, because up here you maybe could win. And this doesn't well apply to our situation here, but I'm trying to represent the idea of what tail means. In investment, what that would mean is typically the way that we talk about tail risk in investment is we're like, hey, you could have, if you do this investment, you could, you know, win as much as $1 million, or you could lose as much as 500,000. So the far end of the tail, this end of the tail, right, would be your loss of say 500,000. And so a investor, an intelligent investor, which looks at both tails and says, it is fabulous that I could win $1 million, but I really want to make sure that when this game is over, right, when this particular bet is over, that I can play again. And if I lose $500,000, I'm out of the game. I don't get to play the next round, right? I face financial ruin and I can't play anymore. I'm out, right? And so investors care about the tail risk, meaning this end of the tail, because they want to avoid financial ruin. It's better to play a game where you can afford to absorb the tail risk, even if the upside, the potential upside, is not as exciting, right? So think about this. Imagine that I pull out of this box here a revolver, and I say to Taylor, would you like to play Russian roulette? And if you win, I'll give you $100,000. And if you lose, you won't worry about it anyway. All right, would you take that bet? $100,000 is a lot of money, right? That's your risk out this side, right? The tail risk is what? Death, right? There is no next game. If you lose, right, you are ruined. You are out, quite literally. You know, if you play Russian roulette and you lose, whatever the upside potential is, whatever the bet is, hey, if you win, I'm going to give you $1 billion. Okay, you know, but if you lose, there isn't a next round for you. You're out, right? And so that's what tail risk is, and that's a lot of what insurance is about, right? Is can you afford to absorb that $20,000 on the tail? If you can't, then you don't want to play that game. And the way to not play that game is to buy insurance, right? Because you have to play the game. That's what it kind of comes down to is we're all going to play the health game, like it or not. So the way to get out of playing my game is to buy insurance, right? So in order to not play, in other words, in order to avoid the tail risk of losing $20,000, the way to not play is to buy insurance. That's the only way to not play, because you're playing the game whether you like it or not. So unlike Russian roulette, where you could say, no thanks, Monica, I'm all set. I don't want to play that game with you. And I'll say, I'll let you go first, even. You know, I'm generous like that. I'll let you pull the trigger first. And you'll still say, no, good, I'm all set. Don't like that tail risk, even regardless of how much upside you offer me. I don't like that tail risk. With health, we all have to play the game. And so that's why health insurance is important, particularly for kind of your middle and lower income people, like probably most of us in this room, I'm guessing. I don't know your personal financial background, but I'm guessing if you come to UNH, you probably are in that middle to lower, range. Okay, so most of us choose to buy health insurance instead of playing the health game naked, as it was. Okay, so now we know we have an expected value of 200. So if the expected value is 200, and we said with the roulette version, I said if the EV is equal to the bet, then that's a fair game. In this case, I want to say if the EV is equal to the premium, then that is a fair game. Right. So, unlike, or very much like the roulette game that we've been talking about, unlike the roulette game, or very much like, I guess, like the roulette game, you've got to bet something, right? And so in order to not play the health game, you have to pay a premium. So a fair game, if the insurance company was playing a fair game with you, right? Then, and fair game doesn't mean fairness in sort of the justice sense, but fair like in equal, like all at the end of our series of games, everybody would have what they started with. So in this case, the fair game would be the insurance company would set their premium equal to 200, and so because the risk that they would take from, say, Saffron, right, would be that on average Saffron's going to cost them $200. Okay, so the premium in this case would be 200. Now, why is it that insurance companies don't play a fair game? And let's set aside that they're greedy, greedy businessmen. Let's set aside that assumption, because calling business people greedy is a bit like saying water flows downhill. So people are in insurance to make money. Right? So why is it that? So let's set that aside for a moment. Let's assume right now that they will only do it if they can make some money off of it. Right? What else? What other reason would they have to charge you more than the fair game? Right? So your premium in this case is not going to be 200. It's going to be something more than 200. What else do they have to cover?
Do they have to have enough money to cover if someone that they have coverage over gets sick or has like a serious incident?
Say it again, I'm sorry.
So they have
You don't have enough.
They have to have enough to cover like the rare cases, the more expensive cases?
Okay, so you're talking about extreme, and so there are going to be outliers, right? So sometimes, from the insurance company's perspective, sometimes if there's going to be a claim that is much bigger than $20,000, maybe it's going to be, you don't just get you don't just get an appendectomy that costs $20,000. You get cancer, and in which case now we're talking about $500,000, right? So that would be a consideration. That's kind of so they're going to a real insurance company as opposed to the simple game that I've set up, right, with the possibilities of just 0 or 20,000. In reality, you have a whole range of possible outcomes, from $100 to $1 million or more, right? So a real insurance company would have a much more complex set of states, and they would do a much more complex calculation. So that's a fair question, and they know that they have kind of extreme tails that they have to be worried about. And I think I talked about reinsurance with you guys last time, right? No? Okay. So insurance companies actually have, there's like your retail insurance companies that you all know about, right? So like Blue Cross and Cigna and so forth. There's these insurance companies that you think about. Insurance companies have insurance companies, and they're called reinsurers. And a reinsurance company is a company that insures insurance companies against extreme tail risks. So Cigna, and they probably have to be really extreme, but Cigna would have a contract with a reinsurer. It's an odd word. Reinsurer or reinsurance. Cigna would have a contract with a reinsurer that said, if our claims go up above, and it's not going to be for an individual, because Cigna can absorb, $1 million loss when you have got cancer, for example. I'm not wishing it on you, but but if somebody got cancer, right, they know that that's going to happen, and they have that built into their models. What they don't know is COVID's coming, right? And they're going to have thousands of cases if they insure New York City, right? And you're going to have thousands of cases that are going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars each. That might blow up their model, right? That might send them into that financial ruin in the tail risk. And so insurance companies then take out policies with reinsurers who specialize in taking these very extreme risks off of the hands of insurers. And so the reinsurance contract would be something like, if your total claims that you have to pay out in New York City exceeds $1 billion, right? We will pick up at $1 billion, we will cover everything above $1 billion. So that's what a reinsurance company does. Probably more common than health insurance is property insurance for reinsurers. So think of buying property insurance in Miami, right? What happens in Miami like every fall? What is it? Hurricanes, right? It's hurricane season right now. We're heading into hurricane season in Miami. And every couple of years, we get a once in a 100-year hurricane. Ironically, it comes like every 5 years, but it's once in 100 years, right? And massive devastation across all of, some wide swath of Florida or some coastal area, right? I had the good fortune of, I lived in Fort Polk, Louisiana for a couple of years, and moved away in 2005. And if any of you remember what happened so I moved in June of 2005. Anybody remember what happened in July of 2005 to the New Orleans, Hurricane Katrina, right? So I had the good fortune of moving about a month before Hurricane Katrina, or maybe it's 2 months, just before Hurricane Katrina ripped through and flooded New Orleans, right? Massive devastation to New Orleans. I will tell you, we lived about a 4-hour drive from New Orleans. So we were west and north of New Orleans, so kind of like up and over. Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. We were that far away. The winds were so strong that they ripped the roof off the junior high school that we had in town. They lost power in the city for something like 3 or 4 days. Imagine living in Louisiana in July or August with no AC. My friends were talking about how they were dragging their like mattresses out into the backyard to sleep because it was just so hot and miserable, right? Because the houses are all built now with the assumption you have AC. The hospital lost power. The hospital I worked at lost power for 3 days. They had to run off emergency generators for 3 days. But when that happens, right? So let's say you are State Farm, right? And you've got thousands of property insurance contracts in New Orleans, right? Your bet is that in any given year, 5 of those houses are going to burn down or get flooded or whatever, right? And so you charge premiums that reflect that probability. And then Katrina comes and destroys not 5, but 999 of your houses that you're insuring, right? You would, if you are State Farm and insurance, property insurance, fall into that tail where you would face potential financial ruin. And so State Farm, knowing this reality is possible, though unlikely, would sign a reinsurance contract with a reinsurer saying, okay, if we face some astronomical loss, the reinsurance company will step in at a certain level and take the rest of the loss. Right? And so reinsurance companies, what they do is they make bets all over the world, right? So that they're diversified, so that, yes, okay, we get a Katrina this year, but we are still collecting revenues, premiums from, London and, Sao Paulo and all, and New York and all these other places, right? So that they're diversified and they can afford to absorb it. That's a little segue I plan to talk about, but that is a real thing too, right? So reinsurance. Okay, so why are the premiums always greater than the expected cost or the expected value? A couple of reasons. One, so the premium is greater, so you're going to have in healthcare, you're going to have the expected medical expense, right? Let's say that's equal to 200. You have to have profit. They have to have particularly if they are a for-profit entity. The reason they're in the business is to make money, right? They don't do this because they're nice people. They do it because investors want to make money. Now they're providing you a service that's valuable, right? If they sell you this health insurance, then you don't have to play the health game and face potential ruin, right? And so, but in order for them to be motivated to do that with their money, right, and their time, they have to be paid something. Because if you're not willing to give them a profit, they will take their money and do something else, right? They'll start a burger chain or a social media company or something, right? So investors look at the possibilities in the marketplace and they say, where can I make money? And they say, oh, there's an opportunity here in health insurance. People don't want to play the health game because the health game, everyone faces a high probability that at some point in your life, you would face financial ruin, right? And so we'll provide that service. We've got to have a profit. Even if you're a not-for-profit health insurance company, like Harvard Pilgrim, as opposed to, say, United Health, which is a for-profit. You're a Harvard Pilgrim. It's a not-for-profit. They have to make profit. Why do they have to make profit? Because they need to be able to reinvest and cover growth costs and replacement costs and so forth that we'll get more into. But there are also, a big part of this is processing costs. Right? So the health insurance company faces a medical loss, right? It's going to, on average, if we all buy health insurance from, from Deborah, right? Deborah sets up a health insurance company. We all buy insurance from Deborah. Deborah knows that on average, she's going to take 39 times 200. She's going to have, on average, 39 times 200, which is 78. So 7,800 loss every period, whatever it is. Deborah knows she's going to have to shell out 7,800 every period in expected losses. She has to make a profit, but on top of that, she has to pay somebody to handle all the claims, right? So when Taylor gets sick, she has to file a claim, or her provider has to file a claim with Deborah to get paid. Somebody has to pay for that processing, right? That's not free. Some of you might go work for an insurance company when you graduate. It's a good field. You can make a good living in health insurance. But that administrative cost is a real thing, and it's over and above the medical cost, right? You could eliminate that cost and this cost by flying naked without having, in other words, without having insurance. Right? You could eliminate the profit and the processing costs by just choosing not to buy insurance. But the reality is, insurance companies have a processing cost, right? It's a real cost to them. They have to have a place with employees that receive the claims, review the claims, make sure that the providers are not trying to defraud them, make sure that your policy actually covers the things that the provider says they've done for you, and then actually cut a check. That's a real cost, and it's over and above the 200, right? And then there are other costs like marketing and advertising. And I'll leave it at that. So Harvard Pilgrim, if you're from the Boston area, you've probably seen ads for Harvard Pilgrim, whether it's on TV, on the radio, on the T, right? You've seen ads for Harvard Pilgrim. Ads for other insurance companies as well. You watch TV. I'll throw the the jingle. State Farm is there, right? You probably know that song, right? Even if you don't want to, because there is a marketing element to a business. So you have marketing and advertising. So let's just say those are three components that are not going to be covered. So they know that there's going to be a medical cost, right? A medical loss of 200 on average if we're playing our game, just our health game. There's going to be on average a loss of 200. They've got to cover that. They've got to have some profit. For profit or not for profit, they have to have some profit, because the profit allows them to reinvest, replace broken equipment, improve their position, so forth. And that's whether that's for profit or not for profit. The difference between for profit and not for profit is what did we say last time about profit? What does a not for profit have to do as opposed to a for profit?
Not for profit has to take all of their profit after expenses back into for profit just pays it.
Okay, so a for profit. Right, good, Saffron. A for-profit must reinvest all of its profits into the business. So Harvard Pilgrim, if it runs $1 million or $100 million profit, must reinvest that in providing better, cheaper health insurance. A United Health, if it runs $1 billion profit, because it's an enormous company, if it runs $1 billion profit, it's probably going to reinvest most of that back into improving the business. But it can, and I believe it does, pay out a dividend to its investors, right? The difference between a for-profit and not-for-profit is not that not-for-profits don't have profit and don't need profit. It's that the not-for-profits must reinvest all of the profits back into the business. A for-profit can pay out a portion of the profits, but most companies reinvest most of their profit most of the time. even for-profits. So you're going to have, so the reason that the premium is going to be greater than the expected value is because the insurance company has these additional costs, if you will, to doing the business. They must have a profit. They have to pay for the processing of all the claims, and then they engage in marketing. And there are probably some other things that I could think of if I took a little more time. So there is a thing called a medical loss ratio. MLR. And this is the percent of premiums collected that are paid out to cover medical expenses. So we said that the the expected medical loss is going to be 200. Right? Medical expenses is going to equal 200 on average. And the ACA, right, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, ACA, otherwise known as ACA or Obamacare, right, said that small or medium group plans have to have an MLR of greater than or equal to 80%. Large plans have to have an MLR of greater than or equal to 85%. So what that means is if you are a small or medium group plan, so like I believe we've talked about how UNH is self-insured, right? So it would be a kind of small to medium plan because we have about 10,000, probably 10,000 covered lives. And I forget what the break point is, but let's assume we're a kind of a medium plan as opposed to having millions of lives covered. You know, we're probably a small to medium. 80% of the premium must go towards covering, say, the $200. So that means that 80% of my premium P has to equal 200. So what is the, if my medical loss is expected to be 200, what is the highest premium that I could set if I was UNH self-insuring? So I have to have a medical loss ratio not greater than 80%, or not less than 80%. So it could be 85 or 90 and it'd be fine, but I can't have it be 75. So what is the premium, the maximum premium that Cigna could set for UNH? Because Cigna is the company that actually manages the insurance, the self-insurance. Anybody on Zoom land? What are you going to do? Yes, ma'am.
250?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Is it 250?
That's it. Yeah. Assume your medical expenses are going to be 200. So I heard somebody on Zoom.
I was wondering if it was 250, the answer.
Right. How do you get 250?
I divided 200 by 0.8.
Yeah. You just get rid of the 0.8 and you wind up with P is equal to 250. If we were a large plan, we'd have 0.85 instead of 0.8, and then you'd divide both sides by 0.85, and you'd have a lower number. Right? So going back to our list, right? We could, if our premium is going to be $250, and we know that our medical loss is going to be $200, then the rest of this would have to be covered by the $50 that each of our beneficiaries pays. Okay, so we'd have to from the additional 50 that we're expecting to. So we're going to charge $250. We expect $200 to go towards covering the collective losses of the pool, and then we've got from that 50, we've got to cover our profits, our processing, and our advertising efforts. Okay. Make sense? Now let me ask you, how are we doing on Zoom? Anybody got a question, concern? I appreciate you guys chiming in up there. All right. So I have a deal for you. I'm going to offer you, how many of you guys have cars? Cars, okay. And Zoomland, you got a car? Shannon, do you have a car? Oh, yeah, all right. Okay, I have an offer for you. I'm going to offer you oil change insurance. And I'm considering getting into gasoline insurance, but I haven't gotten there yet. But I'm going to go with oil change insurance. My oil change insurance covers 4 oil changes per year. Because you should be changing your oil, on average, about every 3,000 miles or every 3 months, somewhere around there. So I'm going to cover your oil change. I'm going to offer you oil change coverage. And I'm going to set my price. Right? And my price is going to be, so I'm going to assume you're going to, and I'm going to cover 4. I'm going to assume you're going to use all 4 of them. And so my expected, my probability is 100% that you're going to use it. And my cost, my expected cost is going to be 4 times, let's say $40, you go to, or 160, right? And so there is no other state. And so my P times V is 100% times 160 or 160. My EV is 160. So my expected loss from insuring you is 160. Will you buy the oil change insurance from me? I haven't set my premium yet, but what's your gut tell you? You're going to buy oil change insurance from me? Okay, Skylar's shaking her head no. But Caitlin says no. Daniela, what do you think? No, you're not interested? You have a car though. It's like it would be no point if you didn't have a car. Okay. How about in Zoomland? Raina, you want to buy the insurance? Yes? No? I can't hear you. You have to unmute if you're talking. Okay, we can't hear you because you're muted. But give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Oh, there you go. Still muted.
Frozen. It like.
Oh, you're frozen.
Gets I would buy the insurance.
You would buy the insurance?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, let's go with that for a minute. So what am I going to, now I'm an insurance company, right? So I'm in an oil insurance company, or I'm an insurance company, and I'm now adding oil insurance as one of my possible lines, right? And if I sell my oil insurance, if Raina buys my oil insurance, I know she's going to get 4 oil changes. And it's going to cost me $160. What is my premium going to be? I mean, just put this way. Is my premium going to be less than 160, 160, or more than 160? Right. So Skylar said it's going to be more than 160 because I have to have a profit. I have to make a profit off this line. So I've got to have some profit built in there. There's going to be a processing cost because every time Raina gets her oil changed, she's going to submit a claim to me so that I can reimburse her, or she's going to go into Jiffy Lube with her oil insurance card, and they're gonna write a claim, and Jiffy Lube's going to send a claim to me, and I'm going to process it, and I'm going to reimburse Jiffy Lube, right? So there's a processing cost, and then in order to make sure that everybody knows that I have this product out there, I have to advertise it, and so there's going to be an advertising cost. So let's go with let's say I can operate on a relatively small. I don't need my loss ratio can be pretty high. Let's assume that my loss ratio is 90%, right? Then my premium is going to be 0.9 times P equals 160. So I'm going to divide both sides by 0.9. And I'm going to get 160 divided by 0.9 equals 178. So the premium is going to be 178. So you're going to pay me $18 to provide you oil change insurance. Now, if you did not buy oil change insurance from me, what is your expected cost personally? What is your tail risk, if you will, over the course of the year? 160, right? You're going to spend 160 this year on oil changes. It's 100% probable that you're going to spend 160 on oil changes. Well, if you own a car, does $160 put you in possibility of financial ruin? No, because if it did, you wouldn't own a car. Because it's 100% probable that you're going. Now, Grant, I know you're like, I don't actually change my oil every 3 months. I get it. I don't either. You can really run a car for a lot longer than 3,000 miles. But if you were, commuting an hour each way each day, you'd probably, you probably would change your oil that often because you'd be putting on a lot of miles. But regardless, let's just go with, let's say your particular maintenance schedule would call for 4 changes a year. That's 100% predictable. You're going to spend that money. So A, it's 100% predictable. You know it's going to happen. B, it doesn't represent financial ruin, right? Those are 2 important points that you want to think about when you consider buying insurance, right? What's the probability? If it's 100% predictable, it's not really insurance because there's no risk involved, okay? If it's 100% predictable, there's no risk involved. It's 100% going to happen. What you are really buying is prepaid oil changes. Okay? So, these are really So there is a component to healthcare that's very similar to this, right? If you are on a birth control medication, or say you have a thyroid issue, you are going to be taking medication for, you're going to take Synthroid every day. It's completely predictable, right? Those expenses are completely predictable. If an insurance company looks at your medical record and they're like, oh, Allie has hypothyroidism, she's going to take a Synthroid pill every day. I have no idea if you do or not. Probably you don't, but if you're an old guy like me, you're going to probably have a couple of different things. You're going to be taking a cholesterol pill and whatever, and a couple of other old man pills every day. Completely predictable. If somebody looks at my medical record, they're going to be like, okay, he is going to have a completely predictable medical expense of X, right? You're going to have think about dental insurance. You're going to go twice a year for a cleaning and X-rays, right? It's a completely predictable expense. Dental insurance is a significant portion of dental insurance is a prepaid service, right? You are paying for the cleaning and the X-rays on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, or however often you pay your dental insurance. And I realize you guys probably don't, any of you have dental insurance yourselves, you probably get it through your parents. But you're paying some premium, and health insurance works the same way. You're paying some premium. A portion of your premium goes every time to a prepaid portion of your insurance. So health insurance, and we're going to stop here because we're out of time. Health insurance, health insurance, there we are. Hello, outside there. Health insurance has a prepaid component. So think about your annual exams, your immunizations, and a lot of the other benefits that the ACA has guaranteed. That's a piece of it. And then it has real, true, pure insurance, which is the unexpected. I get run over by a bus, I get cancer, I get something horrible happens to me. That's actual real insurance. All right, we'll pick up there next time. Have a great weekend. Pure insurance.
Thank you.
All right, gang. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.